Welcome. Tiny Hands, Big Dreams, here with a somewhat controversial conversation. Roots. The lack of them, the need to put them down, or...
expectations of them.
Yeah. Or the expectations to not have them. Also, I'm going to touch on, is it time to leave? And sometimes it takes an outside perspective to sort of pause you and get you to think of, like, wait a minute, like, I'm just doing my thing, I'm like living life. Should I be trying to pull up roots and leave to move somewhere else? Which you know, in your normal day-to-day life, you don't maybe think about. You just sort of keep going. Sometimes. But sometimes it's good to take pause and look back at your situation from an outside perspective. A perspective, someone from a different country, from a different time period.
Or just from, your perspective, but just trying to step outside of the daily things. It's very easy, at least for some people, more than others probably, to get in the routine of just, I'm doing these things every day, and not looking at a bigger picture, not looking at the future, not looking at
you're on
a slight level of unhappiness constantly.
You're on the hamster wheel of the calendar month to pay bills. Bills are monthly things. Yep. You got to this. You got to work these many days. You got to this. You have a weekend where you just maybe want to relax. You got to get some stuff done. You got
to. Before you know it, years and years and years and years go by, and you may not even realize that you aren't happy, or that where you are is not where you want to be.
Or is it not good for your future generations? Is it not good for your children? Now,
and that's part of the putting down roots or moving roots, or
and they're somewhat opposite feelings. Like, in order to put down roots, sometimes you need to pick up and move.
That's what we did.
Yeah. So basically, if you're from the United States, hi, people where we were from. Most everybody there has ancestors that at one point moved there. Almost everybody. Which means at some point somebody in your family went,
somewhere else is better.
Things aren't good here now. We need to leave, which is very difficult back then, much more than it is now.
Much more potential risks.
Oh, gosh.
Sacrifices. Far more.
Yeah. Yeah, when it's, 3 months to get a letter from the New World.
Yeah.
Kind of like...
It's a very different...
It's very, very different kind of situation. But they still did it. And they decided that something was going wrong, was bad things. It's better there. Move there. Start anew. Put down roots. Well, so now you're like, oh, yes. We stay where we are. We stay where our family is. And that's good up until it's not.
There's something to be said for having that home base.
I grew up that way.
No, I didn't.
See, I had a huge family. There was lots who had been there in the greater Pennsylvania area for I don't know how many generations. 3, 4, 5 generations.
You had roots.
Yeah.
Like generational roots.
Yeah.
See, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
When I was born, we were somewhat, I guess, near a lot of family, but I don't remember that. And by the time I have memories, we had moved and we were in a different state, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. So, roots. And we think roots are good. We've moved here to try to put down new roots. It's not just some temporary project.
And I think that's something, we've gotten that question many, many times. We've gotten that question personally from friends and family when we moved to Ecuador. Why are you leaving? How are you leaving? Aren't you going to miss your family?
When are you coming back?
Or just the family part of it. And I'm like, yes, there are people first of all, we weren't near family to start with. So it wasn't like we were leaving that very rooted family dynamic. It just wasn't. But it was also, at some point in your life, I think that you start looking forward for family instead of backwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, at some point you flip.
As a child, your family is your siblings, your parents, your aunts and uncles, cousins.
Yeah.
Typically, same age or older.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point that flips. I guess maybe when you start having kids. I don't know exactly when that switches, and you start looking forward into future generations, where you will then be the older generation, and what you want for them. Because at some point, like the choices that your grandparents, your great grandparents made about where they lived, that maybe either doesn't align with what you want for the future, or the place no longer aligns with that. Because places change.
Places change. People change too. But as we've seen lately, places are changing. We've been getting a lot of comments, emails from people who watch our channel. Thank you. We appreciate it.
It might take us a couple days to get back, but we appreciate it.
Who, like, it's time to get out. It's time to leave. And they're different places, different countries. Some, the States, Canada, some local. In the same country we're in. But the place that they were in is no longer good. So we get these, like, it's time to get out. And sometimes you come to that realization. Now, I guess it's easier if you're a retired person, like it's just you're worried about your own.
Or you're on the other end of that, and you are younger, single, or couple, and you're not really at the. You don't need to put down roots yet. I guess you're not there yet,
and you don't have a whole lot of things tying you to the world.
And that's where people end up traveling a lot to find maybe the place they want to do that. We were sort of, I guess, kind of in the middle of that.
Yeah.
We very much knew we wanted to put down roots somewhere.
And we started looking for somewhere close to us.
Because that seemed, well, I mean, honestly, it just seemed easier. Let's be fair. You start where you are mostly.
Where you're comfortable.
Where we did have ties. To the general areas. We're like, okay, we'll start there. And that didn't work. And then the realization was finally that where we wanted to put down roots for future generations. Somewhere
that we thought future generations
had the best chance at a good life. That's
yes.
I mean, isn't that why all
not having
immigration
some
happens?
sort of massive of war, of oppression, of things, of famine, of calamity.
That's why all immigration, like it's freedoms, it's safety, it's security, it's a better life. I mean, I think that was like always the core.
Fear of persecution of something that you hold near and dear. And now just being a homesteader, being, someone who tries to be self-sufficient and prepared is literally listed on the FBI's list of you are a suspect of terrorism.
Have chickens.
For having chickens.
Because when they used to tell you that you should have chickens.
Government used to tell you should have chickens.
And a garden and all.
Yes, things have changed.
So, when people immigrated to the United States, it wasn't false. It wasn't wrong. They weren't wrong. It was better than where they were.
Yes.
It started out good.
It did.
But it has since, in the last however many hundreds of years, changed.
So if you look around and you start to have anxiety about you have to keep your doors locked. You have to watch when you're driving on who's around you so you don't get carjacked. Your neighbors. You won't let your
kids out in your own yard.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time now.
Or your neighbors, down the street got robbed. Something happened, or someone's kid died of drug overdose, and it's kind of going around the neighborhood with it. And it hasn't gotten to you. Are you burying your head in the sand? Like, it's not us. I
think what happens, there's some of that, but I think a lot of it is it didn't happen overnight. It never happens overnight.
Never.
So it's such a slow progression that people are like, oh, well, that one thing happened, and this other thing happened, and it's so slow that you don't notice it until it's so bad that you're like, oh, I should have left a year ago.
So, I used to live near San Francisco, and we would go every so often to San Francisco. San Francisco is dying. It's legitimately dying. Like the little machine off to the side is beeping erratically of like, these are your last gasps. I'm watching crime spiral out of control. A lot of it coming not just out of San Francisco, but out of Oakland, which is right across the bridge. Neighborhoods closing down. People giving up. Homes that are unsellable because of homeless encampments or crime. And then there was a whole video on Fisherman's Wharf. For Oh my gosh, 100 years. The absolute like place you go when you're a tourist going to San Francisco. It's closed. Almost every single store is closed. The famous bakery you've heard about, yeah, that's gone. The famous thing, the something to this, to the museums, it's gone. Everything is closed. There's a couple of souvenir shops. Crime and homelessness. The place has descended. Commercial real estate is tanking. Their tax base is tanking. People are just.
And if you look back in history,
But it's slow.
And I think that's a problem.
It's been happening.
It's hard to see it
For 15, 20 years.
It's hard to see it when you're in it.
Yeah.
It's also hard when your roots are somewhere to maybe see or accept that things have gone poorly there. It's not an easy thing to do, to leave somewhere.
It's not. But the incremental degradation of things, and I see this with the government, with rights, and I know people that were like, well, we're gonna prepare, we're gonna stockpile guns, and I'm like,
there's a lot of the patriotism, which while I think is good on its,
I was raised as highly patriotic.
I think it's good on its core values, I guess.
Sure.
But at some point you have to realize that what you are fighting for is no longer possible.
There will not be a fight like the OK Corral where you can take your guns and your things and beat the oppressive government and win. It will not happen that way. It will be slow and insidious, and there's things, and there's rule changes, and there's a tax change, and there's a something, and there's this, and there's that, and you won't. There's never going to be, and it's by design, there's never that defining tipping point moment to cause you to react. It is this long, slow degradation of everything is just going to be harder and harder, and they're going to send you paper in the mail,
less and less rights,
saying you have to this or pay a new tax, or you can't do a certain thing, and you can't fight that. You can't fight the nameless person who sends you a paper from a government organization.
What are you going to do?
To a P.O. box, and that's intentional. Yeah. So at some point you have to, if you went back in time of 10, 20 years and decided we're going to draw a line in the sand of things that are critical and important to us, and when they get crossed, that's it, red line.
But nobody does that ahead of time.
You would have already crossed it.
Because you don't know that those lines are even possible. I would have never been able to come up with those lines in the sand for us, because I wouldn't have thought that...
But if you did them now, I bet in 10 years we will have crossed them again. And 10 years earlier would have, there's this, whatever you think is absolutely what you can't do, it will take a period of time. So, roots. Welcome to beautiful Ecuador. Family-based culture. It works for us. Our neighbors are friendly. The weather is lovely. It's a lovely day today.
It is.
We have picked a wonderful little valley here to put down roots. We own it outright. It was inexpensive. You can afford to leave the U.S. and do that. There's a lot of places like this. We have a lot of reasons, and we've talked about some of the reasons why we picked here. There's a lot of places that match your views of whatever your views are.
Yeah. But I think looking forward is something that people don't... I don't know at what point the historical immigration of... I mean, it used to be a relatively common thing to immigrate to somewhere better. Other parts of the world move around countries more. It's not uncommon to move to a different country. There is something about the United States, and I think to a large part Canada, that maybe there's more patriotism, maybe there is more... I don't know, but I feel like it is less common to leave and move to a different country.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is.
Well, I mean, it was a big, beautiful, great country with lots of opportunity. It was supposed to have all of
these freedoms. It was supposed to have all of these
with space for everybody.
I mean, it was the American dream.
With resources, yeah. It was the greatest country of the world for some period of time. And that has not been true for a long time, no matter which metric you look at. People still think it. That's just the inertia. Big country. There's a lot of inertia to it. But there's not a metric you can point to.
It says it's better than anywhere else.
You're like, oh, it's 38th in the world. Oh, but what about this? Oh, you're 50th. What about this? Like, yeah, you're 17th. You're, ooh.
I mean, you can balance and say, well, it's bad here and it's good here, and that's, most places will have something that's a negative. But when it's all low on the list of positives, you're like,
The best one we've heard is, well, it hasn't gotten to me yet. And I've seen that too from some comments of like, well, in the little space that I'm in, it hasn't gotten here yet. That's like standing on a tiny island watching the flood come in going, I'm not going to run to higher ground because it hasn't gotten to me yet. But by the time it does, you won't be able to leave.
Or the volcano erupting and people are videoing it, and you're like, you might want to, well, it's fine, I'm not fine anymore.
And then they start running and screaming.
Yeah. So instead of running and screaming, plan a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
It's hard. And somebody has to make that hard decision of, we're going to spend an inordinate amount of money and effort and time to go somewhere where we don't have roots, we don't have a knowledge of the local area of everything that's familiar and easy, and I don't know the stores to go and get this and that thing. You don't know any of that. So like there's this barrier of like the unknown, of effort, of...
Well, and it's pulling up your roots. I mean, we could use the gardening metaphors. It's shocking. It's hard.
If you pull up a plant out of the ground, even one that's not doing well, there is transplant shock. You've pulled it out of the ground.
Even if you take it from poor soil, and you're putting it in the most lush, perfect, amazing Amazonian topsoil, it still is going to have a period of shock.
Yeah, and the leaves like,
what am I doing?
But then, boom. And then it can
leave
thrive.
It in poor soil, it's going to be stunted and sad, and like it'll still it's terrible.
I try to do sad plant there.
It's still technically alive.
Yeah, it's alive. It will never bear fruit properly.
But it's difficult.
It is difficult. So then you get down to laziness. Is it laziness, or are you so inundated with so much else?
I don't think it's, for a lot of people, I don't think it's laziness.
That you simply cannot, like, I just can't. Like, that's just, it's just too much more to bear.
Yeah.
On top of both parents working full-time jobs.
The culture that has sort of been created, at least in the U.S., is there is no time. There's no time. Everyone has to have a job or multiple jobs, and the kids are all in school, and there's 1,000 activities, and there's always things to do, and there's TVs and iPads and video games and phones, and there's just stuff at you all the time. At what point in most American families could you just think about the world around you? Think about whether you're happy. Think about where this is where you want to be, where you want future generations to be. While
being inundated with the propaganda,
all of that that comes with all the screens,
that is coming at you with all of the screens, all the little talking heads saying things prepared by somebody with a degree in psychology, read by a paid actor, or in form your opinion,
or in your peer groups that are having the same thing. So even if you're not on the screens,
they are.
You go and talk to someone. Well, can you talk to a coworker or a friend, or can your kids talk to anyone who is not also inundated with all of that?
Yeah.
And even talking about that makes me tired.
Yeah.
So at some point, are you just, as a society, as a culture, too tired to figure out that you should leave? And I think that might be a lot of it. I don't know if it's lazy per se. I think it's just
work people right up to the edge that they don't have time for anything else.
There's exhaustion
to better the situation where they are, or even simply leave.
Yeah. Even if they're seeing the things and they're like, oh, that's terrible, oh, that's bad, oh, that's bad. I can't even consider I can leave. It's too much.
It is.
I don't have the money, I don't have the time, that's too hard. And there's a lot of people who think that pulling up the roots of their children is a terrible idea.
So then you get into the, well, I'll wait untils.
Well, and there's a lot of people that are, well, I don't want to move until my kids are grown.
Or they're out of this school into this grade.
I personally just think that's, I think it's Well, there's always an until.
You know, until like the grandmother they're taking care of dies. Well, we can't leave because
We can't leave
Granny's
because
here.
we can't leave because, and those are usually roots.
Yeah.
In a place, they're usually people that they can't leave, and I don't. I mean, I can't be like, well, just leave all the people that matter to you. Like, okay, I get it. But maybe some of the, and this might sound harsh, maybe this is the controversial part. Though looking forward in generations, and maybe that's just me and the way that I grew up. But I didn't. I don't know, the taking care of your family members. Yes, that's great. Do you do that to the detriment of your future generations?
I remember my great grandmother started to get ill, and she really needed someone to stay home with her. Now, my great grandmother raised me for a large part of my life. My mom had to go to work; she had me very young, so that I ended up at my great grandmother's house for 8-10 years. I sort of lived with my gram, and then we moved away, different state, and at some point, you know, people are like, well, she's not doing as good things, and her memory's going, and she starts like taking her medication like wrong, and it's causing problems. And I just said, well, I'll move back. I will go back to the place where I grew up. And while I don't want to stay there permanently, I will stay there and take care of her. She's such a huge part of my life. Of course I will. And I called her and I talked to her, and she says, no, you're not going to do that. What do you mean? She goes, I'm old. I've lived a long life. She goes, you're young. You have your whole life. You're not going to come back to take care of me. That would be a waste of your life. That we have put time and energy into you so that you could go and do that. And I was mad at her.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I guess I had never thought about it that way. But to look back and the whole point is to foster future generations. So do you really want the future generations stuck somewhere?
Yeah. Or in a place where drugs are running out of control, where the average high schooler is using some sort of substance and has easy access, where the schools aren't teaching anything useful except for modern ideologies.
Or where you aren't allowed to homeschool. Where you aren't allowed to know what your child is learning in school.
You're not allowed to know what your child is learning.
That is starting to become far more common.
Yeah, when people started seeing like the whole like remote school things, and they'd peek in and be like, what did your teacher just say?
Yeah.
And this is them on their best behavior because they know it's streaming to a bunch of houses. But what do they just do in the classrooms? There's cell phone video. There's kids that talk about it.
Real bad. But you aren't allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to know.
You're not allowed to know.
In a lot of states, you're not allowed to homeschool without a lot of hoops and loopholes. Is that really where you want to live? I mean, maybe you're fine with that.
So, where you're told what you can and can't do about so many things. And honestly, to choose freedom, which we had a whole list of things. Freedom was up there. We want to do what we want to do. I want to build a house. I don't want someone telling me I have to build it from parts from Home Depot that's ugly and square and has things and features and stuff that I don't really need. We want to express ourselves through our work, build something artistic and beautiful.
That is ours.
Yeah. No, I don't want to have an engineer draw it up. No, I don't
want to hire people. No.
No.
That is not allowed in so many places.
No, you just can't.
No.
You can't get inspected, you can't and you can't get a permit. We don't have that here.
No.
We just do it. There's a house up there.
And we're responsible for ourselves. And
there's earthwork and things and posts and stuff, and I got, beams that we keep getting up a couple at a time. And it's absolute personal responsibility. Like we're on our own. Double-edged sword. But that's where we chose to put down roots. So there's that child. Okay.
He's going to bark more logs for the house.
Yeah, he's literally going up the hill to bark more logs for the house. He will grow up in a place understanding personal responsibility, understanding that your work produces things like food and animals and structures and housing and systems that then benefit you. He will grow up an incredibly responsible person, physically strong, mentally strong, emotionally capable.
Without a lot of the mental or physical poisons.
Yeah.
There's far less toxin in his system here than anywhere in the U.S. And I mean, we've always tried to
both
reduce
physical
that
food
as much as
toxin,
possible.
air toxin, water toxin, and mental toxin.
Yes.
He does have a little old tablet that's on its last legs, and he is allowed to watch some videos. Not.
He doesn't have free reign.
No, he does not have free reign. He can't just bounce through all the garbage.
No.
Um,
He typically finds some off-the-wall, bizarre musical taste, and it's kind of the most fun thing to watch, actually.
What music do your kids pick when they don't have any exposure to pop culture and what's being pushed?
There's no social media. He has never, and as far as I can possibly hope, never have social media.
He has email now.
Yeah.
And he has this many people that he emails.
He's so happy.
With great excitement. So he has, but we've let him just free reign on music. We've had sea shanties, Mongolian throat singing.
Stuff I don't even know what to call it. It's super
some stuff
weird.
We don't know what to call it. He had a little bit of like metal for a bit.
Yeah.
There's lots of like country.
What was it? Is it like Korean something?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's weird.
And I'd be like, dude, like what language is that? And he's like, I don't know. And it's not important to him.
He's just like out there.
Does he like the music? What was it? Oh, he starts listening to Michael Jackson. He's like, you ever heard of this guy, Michael Jackson? Oh yeah, dude, I have. And he had found
so
the video of her "They Don't Care About Us," which is a Michael Jackson video that was widely suppressed. Like yeah, he was sort of big, like he was popular at the time. It's like that's kind of neat. Okay.
You go for that.
But it's really interesting to watch a child develop without all those weird social propaganda things, pushes of artificially elevated. He's only in it for the music. And he, thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And then he goes back and he listens to like some sort of like Irish like chanting thing.
Yeah.
Or like, and he'll groove out and he'll be doing woodwork and got his music going. Okay.
All right.
So it's interesting to see that from a...
Yeah. But that might sound totally random, but that's part of what we wanted.
That's what we wanted. And when you think about that, you're like, wait a minute, what are you, whoever you are, hi. I don't know you, I'm sorry. You could comment. I would like to know you. What do your kids listen to? What do you think about it? Is it the popular groups? Is it stuff that if you hear it, you just sort of like, your teeth bind up and you're like...
If you actually listen to the lyrics, you are greatly
how
appalled.
long before that artist gets put in jail or ends up dead?
If you listen to some of the actual lyrics of the popular music, I thought what I listened to as a teenager was bad. Looking back, you can be like, oh, I didn't realize what that meant.
Yeah.
And that's nothing compared to what it is now.
It is vile.
It is horrible.
Yeah. There's some gnarly stuff out there, and it's pushed, and it's...
Yeah.
So, somewhere where he doesn't have those. That is part of the benefit that he gets. He has the free range to freely choose that are going to set the patterns in his mind.
Yeah.
That bodes well for future generations. For what's there? Roots.
There are definitely people who think that we are not putting down roots. I always think it was kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
When we first declared our grand move.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, when are you coming back? No. We've been asked that so many times.
Yeah.
Whenever something has... our journey here was not smooth sailing. I tried to make that very nice. We had our plans change so many times. Plans fall through. Yeah. And every time something didn't go to plan, someone would be like, well, are you moving back now? And I'm like,
Best advice, do everything yourself. Take care of everything yourself. Plan on using you and all of your abilities to accomplish things. Do not count on others to follow through on agreements.
It might sound a little bitter, but the amount of times in our journeys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't everyone ask every time something didn't go to plan?
Mm-hmm.
And we told someone, oh, well, this plan's changed, or this didn't work out. Or, like, were you moving back?
Oh, you're going to move back. Oh, you're going to move back.
When are you moving back?
Why is that your, like, knee-jerk reaction?
This is not and I don't know, nowhere along the way did you say this was a temporary option.
What kind of, like, wimpy, like, wuss person are you? Like, oh, it didn't go perfect. No, I have to move back. I have to give up.
But I also just don't think people realized or understood that this was a real permanent move. Like, this is the place we have chosen.
It's not just throw the junk in a U-Haul and, like, move across town.
And we're not just coming here and then we're like, oh, we'll go somewhere. No, like, this was the place we chose to put down roots for generations. I mean, unless future generations decide somewhere else is better. I mean, that's because it could turn terrible suddenly. I mean, who knows?
But there's a big, beautiful mountain here.
But we hedged our bets that this was the place for us into the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel pretty good about the choice.
Yeah.
Whenever we get on the internet and look at anything that is happening anywhere else in the world,
they're like, oh, how's the weather? Where you? Oh God, are you okay?
Or the weird political issues, or the the Olympics. I mean, I'm not going to get into it.
The weird mobs and the violence and the things and the.
Because we're still on the internet. We're not like so out. I mean, sometimes I would like to not be on the internet.
That's pretty much our one. That's like the one monthly payment that we have. Is internet.
And sometimes I think that it would be better if we spent less time looking at the internet. Because, man, the world is crazy. And then we look around and we go,
we don't have TV, we don't have credit cards.
Our world's pretty good here.
We don't have movie subscriptions. We don't have, like, we just have internet. We don't even have phones currently. Like, they expire. Really? They're only good for a month. And then sometimes it takes a month before we get around to, like, paying $7 again.
But, yeah, that's, I don't know. It's interesting to be removed enough that the only things you see that are going on out in the world are on the internet, and then you can just walk away.
Like, man, that's crazy. Hey, I got garden to work on. I'm going to go build my house. Right? I'm going to think.
And then I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good.
We just moved the animals. We're going to do a new water system up the hill for them for that. We just keep building it. We're building. Everything we build here gets us more.
And it's ours.
There's ours. There's steps over there. We now have steps to the garden. They'll be there for a long time. Yeah.
And that feels, we talk about pulling up roots. But as someone who did not really have roots, I don't know if I've ever really felt like I was super rooted in anywhere for most of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, we moved every
so often.
And then once I was an adult, I moved in entirely more than anyone needs to move in a few years.
Yeah.
Because life just kept throwing random things at me, and then it threw you at me, and then I was like, well, I'll go do other adventures with you, and we moved a lot. I never had roots. Every time I felt like we were starting to put down roots somewhere, we'd have to yank them back up for some reason. Sometimes literally yank up the plant's roots too, and stick them in a pot and drive away.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, no, I'm taking them with me. Because I'm not going to say no. I'm going to walk away quietly.
That's the last straw, okay? I was so tired of making plans and trying to establish somewhere and then needing to move for some reason. So to come here...
Forehead.
Mosquitoes and all. To come here and be like, no, this is ours. Not just ours for a couple years, not just... But this is it.
Paid cash.
We have no debts.
We're out.
We're here.
Yeah.
So we can simply put down all of our roots. We can make all the choices for ourselves.
Yeah.
And yes, future generations will benefit. There will one day be a guest house.
And that's the way things are done here is if you look at the houses, and this just came up in an email, of why are all these houses unfinished? Well, there's the base floor, and then there's like a second floor, and then there's just like concrete and rebar just like, ooh.
Super common here.
And I say it's like the equivalent of when you make a sandwich and there's the knife with like mayo on it and you set it on the edge of the sink so the mayo doesn't touch anything, which is, I might make another sandwich. It's that like in between. I might add another floor.
Or
and then
my children might add another
and
floor.
at some point children think something, well, like they can't afford to move out, but they could afford to finish the next floor. And then they do. And they move the roof up. And this happens, and this is very common around here. And you'll see houses 4 or 5, like stacked up. Like, I don't think that bottom layer was ever meant to support that. There's a lot of that.
But that is kind of the culture here.
And then, if you do well, think something, well, you could go and move out. But it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of the properties around here, people have been here. They've been on the properties.
Properties get passed down more than they get sold.
Yeah, the real estate market here is much smaller. People don't move around like they do in the U.S. Like Colorado Springs, we lived there for a while. And it was something like...
It was the most transitory city.
Transitory cities.
Transitory cities.
Those happen in all countries. If you listen to other people's podcasts. I think it was like 96% of all the people there aren't from there.
Just sort of a strange... If everyone that was from there moved, doesn't that say something?
It's like a big truck stop in the middle of nowhere.
It felt like it.
And people sort of move in and they move out and they think and something and this and that. What you get is a lot of like weirdness, there's a lot of violence.
Just a lot of discontent.
There's a lot of non-homogeneous...
There's no sense of ownership of the place or even your property you own. It's just, to sell it again, a thing.
Even if you own it, it's a temporary ownership. It's a financial decision to own it. It's not like I'm going to own it and invest in it and things. Like, no, it's here until I sell it and make more money. You don't... Here,
like, properties are passed down generations.
Yeah, you go to sell a property and then like people show up and their family shows up and the whole family parades around and looks at it, and it's because that's what that is. That's a big deal for the family. Roots.
I mean, I guess the point of this is to encourage people to look around. Stop for a second, put the screens down, just like look at life.
Look at life. Smell the roses.
Or roses, if there's no roses.
Yeah, why isn't there roses? There used to be roses.
Used to be birds.
You look around like, why is there so many less birds than I remember as a child? That one always gets me. There's a lot of birds here. We have so many birds of every color of things, of something, and noises.
Just look around. And also, I guess, maybe there's some...
We also don't have chemtrails.
There's also some... They're not real, though. There's also some self-reflection, which is maybe not looking around as much as like looking in the mirror and being like, hey, am I happy? Am I healthy? Am I good?
Am I getting younger? Oh, no. Not getting younger.
Look at your kids.
Do you like the way they're growing up? Do you look around, look at the other kids, look at the future? And it's really very difficult to have that just full pause, moment of self-reflection of like, should we completely stop everything about our life the way we're doing and decide to pull roots and move out? Which is
it's not a small thing.
It's not a small thing. But it may save your life and your kids' life and your grandchildren's life and so on. And for like, we're not saying like to move here, like
no,
we like it.
But it's wherever you
wherever your tribe is, wherever makes you happy, wherever the people when you go there are like the way that you feel you want to live. And there's lots of interesting peoples in the world.
There's lots of places in the world.
There was an interesting one of the little silly internet sites that I look at sometimes had a sudden trend where everybody just posted barbecue pictures. And it went on for days. And I couldn't believe almost every country of the world represented multiple times of like, hey, here's my barbecue, just grilling things, ribs, chopped off steaks, you know. They're like, we live by the beach, we only eat fish, and we only have this trash can with some like wood in it to make a, you know, a fire out of. Like, and the entire world, and all politics talk stopped on the website for several days. That was it. Barbecue. Like, we're all just gonna like have a moment of, we're all just people, and we all have this shared thing of just, it's good to just have a barbecue, to have family over, to just stop and enjoy the sensory event that it is. A lot of beautiful places. And then people just started posting pictures of like also the view of that place. Like, man, there's so many beautiful places in the world, of interesting people, of like cool
different cultures. Yeah.
I wish I had the money to travel more. Or at all. Yeah. My shoes only make it so many miles before I wear them out.
Yeah.
All right. So, look at your situation, decide, talk about it, think about it, talk with your loved ones. Show them this video. Have a moment. Reflect. If you like where you are and you think it's great and everything's going good, that's great. Have roots. Put down good roots. Improve the community around you. If things are getting pretty squirrely and you're simply watching it incrementally get worse and nothing is quite the tipping point, what is your tipping point? What is your line?
Honestly, the problem is once you get to the tipping point, it's usually too late to pull up roots.
It's too late. And know that. And know that if you choose not to have that red line, you choose, then you're going to choose to accept whatever society around you turns into. And you accept it for your children. It's your choice.
Yeah.
All right. This has been a semi-controversial conversation.
I think most everything we say is controversial.
To somebody.
Yeah.
With Chris and Elizabeth, because people don't know our names.
Nobody knows our names. I feel so bad. We get emails and no one knows our names.
Yeah,
we know our names. We forget to share them. Before we go, if anyone actually has gotten to the end of the video, thank you. You're also slightly crazy.
You're all kind of crazy.
We talk a lot. We want to do a Q&A.
Yeah, we're going to put it a few weeks out. Questions and answers. Send in questions. We will answer them on video.
You can email, comment.
We're hoping to put together a solid list.
Yeah, anything. It doesn't matter.
Anything you think we might be able to answer.
Moving to a different country, Ecuador, homesteading, off-gridding, random questions.
Gluten-free.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we just thought it might be fun.
Food related. We like talking about food.
We do.
Coffee. Don't get me started on coffee. That'll be the whole video. All right. This has been a semi-controversial conversation. We'll see you for the next one.